Hey guys, Nova here, and this time we are doing a story time. And this one is just about an awful, horrible teacher that I had. 4th grade teacher. Okay, first things first, let me just say, I was a quiet kid. I did not get in trouble. I was terrified of getting in trouble, so I did my best always to not get into trouble. But I had, and this was a first for me, because all my other teachers I got along with pretty well. But I had nothing but issues out of this lady, okay? So, first week of class, we had to draw and color essentially a self-portrait. I got quite a large percentage off of it because I didn't draw the eyes right. Now keep in mind, we weren't given any instruction except draw a self-portrait. Yeah, that was about it. That was the instruction we were given. That was the extent of it. But I didn't draw the eyes right. It's just... Seriously? I was 8. I don't remember exactly how I drew eyes back then. Well, I was 8 or 9, one of the two, but I don't remember exactly how I drew eyes back then, but can't have been that bad. I mean, if you knew they were eyes, then it should be fine, you know? There was a point in time where we rearranged the room. And, of course, this was one of those kind of teachers. When we rearranged it, the girls weren't allowed to move their own desks. So before we told us this, we weren't initially told this. Before we were told that the girls weren't allowed to move their own desks, I went to move mine. And she threatened to take away my recess for moving it. Because, you know, the boys were supposed to move it. Because girls moving things like that wasn't ladylike. This is going to be a recurring theme for another thing that happened too. But it was so frustrating. And so just infuriating. Because I could move it. I showed that I could move it. Why should we stand by and watch when the boys drag the desks around the room? That's not fair. It's not fair to anybody. Boy, that came out country. But that's not fair to anybody. And I also think just, obvious reasons. If I could move the desk, let me move the desk. That way this gets done quicker. Honestly. And the same teacher, here's where it becomes a recurring thing, this same teacher wouldn't let me play with some of my male friends at recess because they played rougher games. Now keep in mind, they were allowed to play the rougher games, but because I was a girl, I couldn't play it with them. I wasn't allowed to play it with them because they were rough games and girls shouldn't play like that. It was ridiculous. Because, again, it wasn't like they were playing something they weren't allowed to play, because they were allowed to play it, it's just I wasn't allowed to play with them because I was a girl. Which was infuriating, especially because, as a kid, nowadays, I identify differently. Whenever it comes down to it, I identify differently. But, when I was younger, I was such a tomboy. I didn't play with the girls or anything like that. I didn't want to play house. I didn't want to do any of that crazy stuff. I say crazy stuff like playing house is so outlandish. But I didn't want to play that kind of stuff. I wanted to play with the boys and run around and do stuff like that. But no, I couldn't because I was a girl, which was ridiculous. And then to preface this next thing, I will say, when I was in school, I had horrible handwriting. My handwriting was atrocious. It was this particular year we were at a different elementary school than I had been going to before because we moved further. We moved out of town for a year. We came back fortunately afterwards. But the old elementary school that I was at, it didn't count towards your GPA, but we did have a handwriting grade on the report card. Mine was consistently, it didn't go like A, B, C, D for the grades or anything like that, but I consistently had the worst designation that you could get for it. My handwriting is atrocious. It has always been. It especially was back then. I actually had an incident in 5th grade when, from 2nd grade onward in the school I was in, we were, required to write in cursive. Yeah, my teacher outright told me, do not write in cursive, only print, for my handwriting because it was that bad, which is bad, I recognize that, but I'm just one of those people with horrible handwriting. So, and that's relevant because this teacher, and I get it, you need to be able to read what the kids are writing, but this teacher consistently took points off of my classwork for my handwriting. And I wasn't used to that because of where the school I was at before, penmanship, handwriting, was its own grade, like on your grade card. So that would upset me a ton. Which, looking back on it, I get it. She needs to be able to read it, but, it's still just, communicate that I need to work on writing more neatly. A 9-year-old doesn't always read that points have been taken off and assume, okay, I need to practice this. It's just upsetting, But here's the thing. There was one point where I broke my wrist, the one on my dominant hand. But I broke my wrist, the one on my dominant hand, so I was in a cast for 6 weeks. Now, first off, when you do that, the way that things were set up was by doctor's order and all that. I was supposed to do, my spelling tests, they were supposed to be verbal. Any of my tests and things like that were supposed to be verbal, done verbally, because my wrist was in a cast. Makes it kind of hard to write. This lady took more points off for my handwriting being worse. If I'm not mistaken, that one actually caused Mom to get a hold of this teacher and chew her out over that one, because that's not right. That was blatantly not right, because my wrist was in a cast. Of course my handwriting is worse than it already was. That's a given. That is completely a given. It was so frustrating and so annoying because, I would have much rather my wrist not been in a cast. Much rather would have, I would have preferred that. But I broke it. Not much to do about that. I'll explain later how I broke it. I'll explain in a different video how I broke it. I have to do a video on, childhood injuries that were kind of ridiculous. Because the way I broke it was dumb. Not as bad as my sister, though. Hers was fun. Hers was, wow. It takes a special level of clumsiness how she broke her arm. But anyway, like I said, I got more points taken off of it because I wasn't writing neatly, with my wrist of my dominant hand in a cast. But to me, this wasn't the worst one. The worst one to me came whenever, one day when I was doodling. I like to draw, I always have, that's evidenced by this channel. Now, here's the big thing, is I finished my classwork, and the important thing to note is this was not a test. It was normal classwork. I didn't have anything else to work on. I couldn't pull out a book and read because I'd get told to put it away or something like that. I wasn't being disruptive. I was being quiet, and I didn't have any homework to do to catch up on or anything like that. And I had turned in my classwork, but we had to wait, obviously, for everybody to finish before we moved on to the next activity. So, in order to continue, not being disruptive, because that would get me in trouble for sure, I had some blank index cards in my stuff that I had brought from home. So I pulled those out and I started doodling. I made little characters all the time, so I decided I was going to use the index card to make essentially little trading cards of some of my characters. That's all well and good. And keep in mind, I'm being quiet. The other students are not paying attention to me at all because we had our desks grouped in fours at the time, and the kids I was sitting with, I didn't get on with them anyway, so it's not like we were chit-chatting and being disruptive or anything like that. They were doing their schoolwork. I was sitting there doodling, not being a disruption at all. So inevitably, she spots me drawing, because of course she does. Now, she doesn't tell me to put them away. Initially, she doesn't threaten to take away my recess if I don't stop drawing. Instead, what she does was she makes me rip them up and throw them away. Now keep in mind, I'm 8 or 9. This is something that I've made, I've worked on. And rather than just tell me to put them away or something like that, she makes me rip them up and throw them away. I couldn't even put them in the trash can hole. She made me tear them up and throw them away. And the threat was that if I didn't, I would be given a write-up, a DRF I think it's called, for insubordination and acting out, and that I would be given a detention if I didn't do it. So of course I did it. Of course I did it while crying my eyes out because, you just made a kid tear up and throw away something that they were proud of and they made themselves. And it was awful. And that's one of those things that I will never, ever, ever, not dislike this teacher over that. Like, seriously, I still hate that teacher. Somebody who's going to act like that over every teeny tiny little thing probably shouldn't be working with kids. It's just, it was so frustrating because I'd be able to get making me put them away. I'd be able to get, being frustrated with me if I was being disruptive or something like that, or if I was not doing my work. But this was making a problem when there wasn't a problem, and it was ridiculous. And I will never not hate that teacher. I actually don't think I can remember any other instances at the moment where this teacher was exceedingly horrible, because I just did my best to keep my head down and stay away from her, because I did not like her, she did not like me, clearly. So, it's one of those things I will always dislike that teacher. If I can think of any more, or any other awful teacher story times, then I will tell them. But I know everybody's got like that one really bad teacher story, so I wanted to share mine, because I know there's another one with different teachers later on, but I'll have to share those later. So, I hope you guys liked the story time. I want to eventually tell some more story times, come up with some other things that I want to tell, because honestly, if I check around, I'm sure I can find a ton. I'm sure I can. But that's all for now, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!